Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to the Hearthstone Weekly Show. Now, this week we have multiple things coming up in one topic. It's interesting. First things first, Reels, who, as I said last week, he's on the Mana Grind team. So he's on the Mana Grind NA team, so I am going to be covering his I Hearth You thing because he actually won the last one. But this week, he did actually steamroll Christopher. He went 4-0. So next week, I'm also going to be doing one on him. Now, I was thinking that I was going to cut this one out and just do one next week and do some sort of deck analysis this week. But it turned out that the deck he 4-0'd Christopher with was a deck that I wanted to do a weekly on this week anyway, which was Chakki's Shaman deck that sort of brought back Shamans in the top tiers, playing mid-range with Leroy Jenkins OTK with Wind Fury and Rockbiter. That's the kind of deck I wanted to go over, and it turns out he 4-0'd Christopher with it. So it means I get to do deck analysis while actually showcasing one of the top players from Mana Grind, so I'm fine with doing a double topic for this week. But then a third one kind of came up when I was watching this, because I knew Christopher had already lost 4-0 before it was streamed because I talked to Reels. But I couldn't really figure out why, because Christopher is seen as a really, really good player, and he has sort of all of his victories and stats on the screen because Artosis compiled them, which I thank him for. But then I realized something, that while Christopher was playing, he was playing a bunch of decks he wasn't familiarized with. So he made a bunch of misplays, which he shouldn't have made because he wasn't familiar with the deck. Now, we're going to try and do 3 games today. The first one was a bit of a steamroll, and that's going to showcase the Shaman deck the most. The second game is a Druid versus Shaman, where Christopher loses because he misplays, but they're not obvious misplays. They're sort of misplays based on the style of playing that he's not used to because he isn't familiar with the deck. And then, hopefully, if we have enough time, we're going to do the third game, which is Christopher actually playing a deck he's familiar with, which is his Warrior, which is quite well known for. And that the actual difference does show between playstyle. Even though he did better with the Druid deck because it's a better matchup, it shows that he didn't have as many problems making the decisions he needed to do. The last game that was played was with a Priest, but that was a pretty bad game. You can go watch it if you like, but it didn't make much sense that he actually picked a Priest there instead of Warrior. So anyway, first things first, we have the stats of both these players, which normally I wouldn't include, but they're here, so why not? Now, Reels, usually he's made a lot of top 4s, usually with Rogue. He's made top 4s with Rogue several times, and he's also been doing quite well on ladder, as he got to number 2 for a week. He's a really good player. He was kind of underestimated by a lot of people for a long time, but now that he's been winning consistently, and he also 4-0'd a very well-known player in a King of the Hill, and he also beat Trump, people are starting to get to know him better. Now, Christopher is one of the better known Hearthstone players, and the main reason for that is he has less so top 4s, more wins. He's won a lot of tournaments. He has won a lot of different tournaments. We had the Killing Spree, Swiss, which was with the Warrior deck that a lot of people know him for. We had the challenge tournaments that MOG runs money-wise with prizes. He's won a lot of different things, and he's done pretty well in the past with tournaments. Now, if we skip ahead a little bit, because Artosis and DOA talk about these decks for a long time, then we'll go over the actual decks. Now, Reels was playing Chakki's deck, and what we see in the first game is that he does have some familiarity problems with it, but I talked to him afterwards, and he wasn't as familiar with the deck because he was trying to run the best Shaman deck he could, but he hadn't had time to practice it as much because on ladder he plays things like Rogue and Druid. But anyway, so Chakki's deck, I've been over in tournament recaps, but it essentially is a mid-range deck. The top half of the deck is pretty much the same. Stormforgeaxe, Rockbiter, Lightning Bolt, Earth Shocks, pretty much the same. The interesting things come from the Wind Fury, the Flame Tongues, and the Leroy. Now, along with Rock Biters, this provides 3 different ways of making, along with the Wind Fury, of making Leroy into a 18 damage combo very easily. That is often how he wins the game. It's just by having a big creature on the board or a Leroy, giving it Wind Fury, Rock Bitering it, doing 18 damage. Same works with Fire Elemental, huge burst damage. Now, for actual draw, we do have the Azure Drakes and the Gadgetzans for mid game. No Mana Tides in this one. We have the Nat Pagal instead, because Nat Pagal is sometimes better, especially if he keeps drawing every turn, and he costs less. 1 mana doesn't sound like much, but at low amounts of mana, it's very critical. We also have the Feral Spirit stopping early aggro, Lava Burst. This is an interesting addition, which was used to kill Chillwind Deities, and also to deal with just that little bit of extra life that sometimes your opponent has if they're staying at around 20. Big Game Hunter is like a 3rd Hex, means you don't have to spend your Hexes on Ragnaros. Harvest Golem and Unbound Elemental just function as the 3 drops that really stop aggro and snowball in the case of Unbound. Tinkmaster mandatory. It's an interesting deck. It's a very solid deck. It has won, I think, 5-6 tournaments now. Chakki won 4 in a row with it, and then it also won another Mana Grind Open. So there's a lot of tournaments that this thing's won. It's a very solid deck. Now, Christopher is playing a mage deck, which is very weird. I'm not going to lie, this is one of the weirdest mage decks I've ever seen. Now, this is a deck that he's randomly thrown together, and it's something which people are starting to sort of worry about when they play against him because it's so weird. So, first things first, the bottom of the deck looks like it belongs to a Warlock. Apart from the Flame Strike, the Giants Warlock deck, you've got the Twilight Drakes, the 4 Giants. 4 Giants even greedier than normal, Agstraza, Ragnaros, this is big stuff. Karen, Sylvanas. But then you see a Flame Strike, then we have 1 Polymorph, not 2, 1 Acolyte of Pain, as extra draw with Arcane Intellect, because you need them for the Drakes and for the Mountain Giants. We have Nat Pagal, Loot Hoarder, Blood Mage, a lot of draw in this deck. Sun Fury sort of half powers up the Shields Up engine. And then we have Mind Control Tech as one of the most random one-offs I have ever seen. Now, Mind Control Tech does end up having some sort of value in this game, but it's just a really, really weird tech. And I'm not sure if it does work, but it just seems to be too narrow as a card. I would much rather run another Polymorph over it personally. But anyway, we'll get started with the first game. Now, my aim is to do 3 games. I don't know if I can. My aim is to do 3, so I'm going to have to cut the Q&A thing at the end. If you have any questions, ask them during the actual stream, and I'll answer them at the end if there's any ones I haven't actually answered through the actual commentary itself. Now, opening hand-wise, Reels has the advantage. He has the Nat Pagal and the Harvest Golem. Christopher didn't coin out his Loot Hoarder, and the only reason for this is because he doesn't want to give it to an Earthshock, first of all, but his hand is really slow. So he really wants to be able to coin out a Cairn or a Sylvanas because his hand is too slow to be able to just run out a Loot Hoarder early. The Loot Hoarder does get Earthshocked, and while it seems like he won't have a Silence for later, he does have the Hex in hand, so he can pull that off. Nat Pagal gets his draw off. Now, at this point, Christopher needs to just go for card advantage to keep up with Reels when it comes to drawing cards, and just hope that he can come back slightly later in the game. Now, the 2 options here for Reels are Flametongue Totem and then Totem, so Flametongue and then Totem, or Harvest Golem. I think I prefer Harvest Golem just because it's safer. I mean, I know that Christopher has the Mind Control Tech in his hand, but Reels does not know that because Mind Control Tech is such a random tech card. So I still think Harvest Golem is the safer play. You want to keep that Flametongue for later if you draw a Leroy, for example, or when you really need it for the trades. So I think Harvest Golem is the correct play here. And he is in fact going to go for the Harvest Golem. And Nat Pagal gets an extra card. Now, moving into this turn, he's just going to go for the Giant because next turn he can coin out a 6-drop and the Giant should absorb any hexes. And before anyone asked, that was not my video stopping? That was a glitch in the actual video. That was weird. Anyway, so for this turn, I think we're just going to see a Hex and then maybe a Flame Tongue. Flame Tongue in between the Nat Pagel and the Totem. Yeah, just reduce the amount of damage lost. Now, in this situation, there's a couple plays. He could go for Mind Control Tech, which would be kind of sketchy, or he could go for Cairn or Sylvanas. Now, this is what I meant by familiarity. One, he played hypersonically fast there. That was faster than I ever play, and I'm known for playing way too fast. That was sort of noxious level of playing fast. Now, when I was watching this, I was talking to some of the people that were watching this with me on Teamspeak, and I was discussing sort of Sylvanas versus Cairn. Sylvanas looks like the obvious one here because he has 4 minions. Just play Sylvanas, you'll steal one. But it doesn't work that way, because he can sacrifice his Harvest Golem and his Pagel and Healing Totem, and you get a Flame Tongue. And that's just awkward. Like, nothing else will happen apart from you getting Flame Tongue, which doesn't do anything. And then he has 6 mana, so you can play something else. So it's just sketchy. I'll just put it that way. It's just sketchy. If he had Cairn, then Reels has already used a Hex. If he hexes that Cairn, then so what? You hex the Cairn, you have no way of dealing with any of my other large threats like Giants and Ragnaros and Alexstrasza without Tinkmaster. So just play the Cairn. Cairn would have probably been ignored, but then he'd be able to take out the Flame Tongue, then the Totem, and he has the Polymorph and the Frost Nova. Cairn is much safer. Sylvanas is better for late game. I prefer Cairn here as opposed to Sylvanas, and it's actually going to come back to bite him here, where that play possibly loses him the game, because he just loses one of his major threats, and then when his Cairn comes out, it's too late for it to be useful, so he just gets snowballed and loses. Now, what we're probably going to see here from Reels is trading his whole board, and then Fire Elementaling the Flame Tongue that's stolen. He could also go for a Gadgetzan here. I think Gadgetzan is a bit greedier, but considering the fact that it's probably not sort of a chance of something with charge coming out of Christopher, considering the deck style he's playing, he's probably not playing Archon Commanders. Ah, okay, yeah, I missed that. Where if he trades, then the Harvest Golem moves over and he gets the extra attack bonus. Yeah, that's even better. Also, not losing the Flame Tongue Totem, bit lucky, but still quite handy in the end. Interesting that he went for the damage there. I think I can see why, because while keeping the Fire Elemental for later would have been slightly better. For the battle cry, the actual body is very, very relevant, gets him down a bit. But there was actually a slight misplay here, which is if he played the actual elemental on the other side of the Flame Tongue, he would have been able to trade with anything played, like a Ragnaros. I mean, it's turn 6, so he can't play Ragnaros, but you've already seen Giants. So you might see a Giant, anything. You might even just get 2 extra damage in just from being on the other side of the Flame Tongue. So it's a minor misplay. Now, this is something which was very controversial, and this is just because he hasn't played the deck very much. I was talking to Chakki, who noticed that he actually had lethal. Now, Chakki, he's played this deck so much because, I mean, he came up with the deck. He's played it so much that he actually saw lethal in about 3 to 5 seconds, which is the Wind Fury Lava Burst. Again, if it had been on the other side, it would have been even more, but he has more than enough damage. He has 12 from the Fire Elemental, and then he's got 4 from the 4-1, and then the Lava Burst. He has enough to kill him, but he doesn't spot it. He gets tunnel visioned, and he goes to actually kill the Giant with a Lava Burst, and he loses his window for lethal. Now, in most games, you have a situation where if you didn't get lethal that turn, you have it next turn, but in this case, you don't. And the sole reason for that is because he's playing against a mage who has things like freeze. However, he's down to 13, so any Wind Fury with Leroy is pretty much lethal at this point. Now, from Christopher, I think the best play he can really do is probably either Frost Nova draw or polymorph the 8/5 into freeze his board. He needs to stop damage in some way. He could go for the ice block as well, which stops all risk of him dying. Yeah, he's trying to play around the Leroy Jenkins Wind Fury combination, which is smart. Because he's just flat out dead to Leroy at this point, because you go Leroy next to the Flame Tongue, give it Wind Fury, that's 14 damage, it's beyond dead. Oh, not 14, 16. He's going to go for the freeze and for the ice block. I'm not sure if I agree with that, because he protects himself from dying, but then he stops damage in the first place. But it's still the safer play, and considering he played a little recklessly earlier with the Sylvanas, I think it's probably the best one in the end. And we did see him draw Leroy. Bit random. Very lucky for Christopher that he actually decided to put down that ice block. But at this point, Christopher does not have a way out of this. He can go ice block again into mind control tech and hope for the best. He does steal the 3/5. He's going to kill off that Leroy and then probably just ice block up. Yeah, he's going to go for the extra ice block and then probably hero power ping something. Or not, go for the Blood Mage. Putting down Blood Mage almost does nothing apart from giving him an option to cycle, which I think is why I put it down, but it does make him quite vulnerable to Lightning Storm. As we're just gonna see the Gadgets and Lightning Storm combo here. He's gonna get a card and just deal with most of the stuff on the board. A little bit unlucky there on the roll as far as mind control tech goes, but he did get the roll he needed on the 3/2, so pretty 50-50 at this point. Now he does have the Earth Shock, and I would just keep the Earth Shock here and not play it, and the reason for that is because you might see it taunt, but he is in fact going to kill the 3/1. Okay. I would have probably saved it just to stop any taunt creatures from coming out. You never know. Sunwalker would mess with him at the moment. And I think I would have Sunfuried, because you're just flat out dead to some stuff now. Now what we could see here is Gadgetzan into just draw everything. Just draw 2 cards at once, and at that point you have an answer. I think that's what we're going to see. Gadgetzan into Hex, draw 2 cards. This is one of the reasons why Gadgetzan is so good. The effect actually stacks, so you just actually draw cards instead of losing them. Probably going to see Giant into Ragnaros into giving Giant and Ragnaros taunt. He has to do that actually. He needs to give things taunt. Yeah, he's going to kill the 0/3 and then put down the Ragnaros and then give it taunt, and now he can't kill any of them. And now we're in a bit of a weird spot. Now from here we do have a Tink Master, we also have a Big Game Hunter, so it's still the end of the game, but it was sort of an attempted comeback. But this is one of the reasons why Big Game Hunter is in the deck along with the Hexes, and also why Tink Master. It gives him effectively 4 Hexes, so he just doesn't run out. Random small thing, usually if you can kill someone without showing a card in your hand in a tournament like this, then you don't show the card in your hand. Which in this case, it was in fact the Stormforge Axe. Doesn't matter though. The Stormforge Axe is a card that not every Shaman plays, so good to hide the information. But anyway, so what we saw there was the ability of a mid-range deck to do a lot of burst damage, and he had lethal on turn 7. That's the point. He had lethal on turn 7 against a defensive deck, which is quite impressive. So that's sort of what the deck shines at and what it's good at, and that's why it's been doing so well. It's just the surprise factor. The more you play against the deck, the better you are against it, obviously. But it's so much burst damage and people don't expect it. So you just take 18 from a Leroy combo, or just out of nowhere he was dead from 21 life, which is not something he expected, and not something Reals expected either, because he did actually miss the play. But the other thing we saw there was the problems with Familiarity, where Christopher made some weird plays with the Sylvanas and the Cairn, which ended up snowballing and losing him the game, and also a couple of sort of overcommits on the ice block, where he could have not Frost Nova'd there and just drawn cards, and it would have been exactly the same outcome. So it was a bit of a weird sort of decision making on that part, and we also saw the missing lethal. It's to do with playing a deck enough so that you know how to play it correctly. If you ask a lot of very good players, they will tell you, if you're coming up to a tournament and you want to know what deck to play, most of the time the correct answer, apart from sort of the best deck in the format, the correct answer would be the deck you know the most about. Because if you play a deck you haven't played a lot of against someone who's playing the same deck and they've played it all season, then you're most likely going to lose because they have so much more experience with the deck. Now, on to the second game. We have a deck switch from Christopher to a Strife Crow Druid variant, or Druid Beatdown. Now, this one is one of the newer versions, so we're running the Force of Nature combo with Savage Roar and Cenarius, and no Big Game Hunter targets and Chillwind Yetis because they're difficult to deal with. It's the traditional, well, not traditional, it's the newer Strife Crow variant of decks that a lot of people have been running, and it's a good one to watch in the metagame. It's arguably the best deck in the format, arguably. So anyway, we'll get going into game 2. Game 1 took about 20 minutes, so we should be able to do all 3, hopefully. Okay. Now, moving into game 1, opening hand-wise, Reals has the Stormforge Axe and a Hex, which is going to be useful for later, and an Earth Shock, which can deal with Nap Hagel and Loot Hoarders and Blood Mages and things like that. Christopher has, early game-wise, he has the removal he needs for anything, and he has some of his late game secured with an Innervate. So I do think that the opening hands are fairly even, as neither of them have any threats, so to speak. Apart from Innervate, Azure Drake is going to be the first threat being played here, but now he's fresh out of threats. But he did draw the Druid. So from here, a couple things you can do is just play the Axe, and then next turn Lightning Storm, because the totem will block the 4/4. I don't think I'd Hex this, just because you want Hexes for later. So you can afford to invest a couple of cards into this thing, because he innovated it. Well, not a couple, but one card and a bit. So we're going to see the Axe come out. He's going to attack it. He's going for the approach where this early in the game he can sacrifice life. And the main reason he can achieve that is because it would appear that Christopher didn't have something like a Harvest Golem, so he doesn't have the early game threats. We are going to see, however, the Wrath with the draw because of spell damage, getting in that bit of extra damage on Reals. Now, this is the problem with doing what Reals did last turn, which is now he has to take 12 damage from an Azure Drake. That is one of the most cost-efficient Azure Drakes I have ever seen. 12 damage, 3 attacks from a 5-mana creature. Now, he did, however, invest a card into that, and Reels invested 2/3 of one into that, but it's still a bit sketchy. Now, this is what I mean by familiarity, is this kind of play. Christopher is known for his aggro play, so he does go for the aggressive ploy here in the 4/4 charge. But the question is, was it really necessary? A 4/4 with charge is quite easy to deal with, especially considering you've seen that Reels has lava bursts in the previous game. So he could just lava burst this. If he'd made it a 4/6, he has to hex that or attack it with his axe along with a lava burst or get a lucky totem to kill it. Now, by doing that, giving it taunt, if he has to kill it with the axe, he goes down to 12 as opposed to 16, and you take out a totem. So I think it is a bit confused there, where you need to think about what Shamans can't deal with, and that's more to do with playing the matchup less, because traditionally Christopher's been focused on some of the other faster decks, so he just goes straight for it as opposed to sitting back and controlling. We do see a completely different mentality later in the game, but it's something to think about. Okay, so moving to this, we're going to see Nat Pagel, which he just drew into the lava burst. So now Reels, he's behind in health by quite a lot. I don't feel safe at 16, but he does, however, have a setup. He's set up, he can deal with any aggro, he's got the draw engine, he is set up, he can do things. Now this will most likely get hexed, because you just don't want to deal with this thing. Hex, and then using the 2/1 from the axe to deal with the frog. Or he's going to save the axe. Okay, I can see that as well. Saving the axe for when you absolutely need it, or when you need it to get an attack in through the frog as opposed to just flat out killing the frog. Now, as far as Reels is concerned, this board has to be Lightning Stormed, I think. An Azure Drake Lightning Storm would do something. Earthshock Lightning Storm would also would get rid of that 2/3 permanently. But I think we're going to see the Azure Drake Lightning Storm here. It does mean that he has a bit of a weird board, but we might just see the axe come down on that Chillwind. Yeah, I think we might just see the axe coming down on that Chillwind. But at this point, this is very, very precarious for Reels. He's on 12 life against a Druid who plays Druid of the Claws and swipes. There is actually enough burst damage in the deck to kill him. There is enough burst damage in the deck to kill him from this point. Now, I think the couple options we have here is probably Druid with Taunt, because he's just played a lot of removal, he probably doesn't have it. Druid with Taunt, or Ancient of Lore drawing 2 cards. Or we had also Druid of the Claw into Nat Pagel. I think this is the sort of the safer option, so to speak, because it just lets you set up your resources. And we're going to see him take out that 4/4. Okay. The interesting thing to think about this is that he could have pushed damage there and taken Reels down to 4 health. I think I would have preferred that, just because he has swipes in the deck. Reels would have been on 4 life with no way of gaining life, and you're on 30, and you have the ability, you had an Ancient Lore in your hand, so you could draw into it. So I think, in hindsight, probably the best play there was probably Druid of the Claw into, Druid of the Claw with charge, and then probably just Nat Pagel with Druid of the Claw with charge, and Claw with the 2/1, and just attacking him down until he got down to 4 life. Now, he does want to use that 5/5 on that 3/5, preferably, or get in a bunch of damage. We could see a Druid of the Claw with charge to kill the other one, and then attacking him for 5, taking him down to 7. And then giving them both Taunt. I think that's the best play. and we're going to see him start clearing the board. This is where sort of conflicting playstyles come in, where earlier in the game he was going for aggression, but now he's had the opportunity to push a lot of damage. If he had been able to push a lot of damage before, then Reels would be down to 3 life now from hero powers, and he'd have no way of coming back. But as a result from doing this, he has a slightly better board position, but it's still very vulnerable to things like Lightning Storm. A spell power Lightning Storm would get Reels back in the game at the moment, or just a normal Lightning Storm even. You don't even need the spell power, it would just help with killing the Napagel. We could also see a Blood Mage Thalnos into double Earth Shock is very possible here. I think that might be what we see, actually. Double Earth Shocks as removal, it is possible. And then maybe a Flame Tongue Totem. He's thinking about this. I think he's going to go for the Totem, see if it's spell power. Okay, that makes sense. It wasn't. He got the Taunt. So I think we might just see the Blood Mage into double spell powered Earth Shocks. Yeah, that's what we're gonna see here. Just deal with those things, consolidate his actual life that he still has, and just get rid of a lot of the damage you don't want to deal with. He might go for the Flame Tongue here. Is he gonna go for the Flame Tongue and then kill it with Pagel? I could see that. Means he saves silence, which he might need for later. But it does mean he has a slightly worse board position now. Okay, I can see that. And it means he can silence this Karen when it comes out. Now, we could see another Ancient of Lore for draw power, but I think we might just see Karen into Taunt. If he goes Karen and then gives both of them Taunt, then he's in a good spot. Also, random thing, the Blood Mage Thalnos position is slightly off. Again, not used to running Flame Tongues, but the Blood Mage should have gone on the other side of the board so that it came into the actual Flame Tongue totem range and became a 3/1 as opposed to a 1/1. It's a small thing, but it is something to work on at least. Now, Christopher is trying to unbug the minions that are very, very bugged at the moment. That's why he's freaking out. He's trying to unbug the bugged minions. Now, all he has to do is make them look like they're in the right spot. It turns out that that is where the Karen is, so if he plays the Harvest Golem, then they are actually next to each other now. It is weird. It is a bug that they haven't fixed yet, but it is possible to cheat it into working. Alright, we're going to see Gadgetzan into spell combos here. Probably Earthshock the Cairn, and then Lightning Bolt it. Or Lightning Bolt the Pagel. This is why playing the Blood Mage on the other side would have been better. Because he could have Earthshocked the Cairn, Lightning Bolted the Pagel, and then attacked it with the 3/1 Blood Mage. And he would have not used any cards on it whatsoever, and he would be really far ahead and back in this game. Oh, we're going to see a second Flame Tongue totem though, which is going to slightly save him here. As this Flame Tongue is going to come down and let him kill the Cairn. This does result in him drawing a lot of cards this turn, which is why Gadgetzan is so good. He's cast 2 spells, and he's also going to use his Blood Mage, drawing a 3rd card. Gets another Lightning Bolt. Okay. So, at this point, Christopher has thrown away his advantage. He doesn't have the advantage anymore. He can't push damage, which is what he had before, where he could have pushed damage. Now he doesn't have it. Now, we're going to see a Lightning Bolt to the face. That'd be weird. Alright, I don't agree with that one. Do not agree with that at all. I don't see the point in Lightning Bolting the face. That was a bit of a weird play just to draw a card. That was just odd. Whatever. Anyway. From here, we're probably going to see Azure Drake, and then maybe give both of them taunt. Or Azure Drake, attack, and then give it taunt. Even Azure Drake, Earthen Ring first here, and then give the Earthen Ring taunt. Could also see Cenarius with 2/2/2 Treants. That could work as well. The problem is that if he kills the 4/2, then the Flame Tongues go next to each other, which gives him 4 damage and also another bonus 4 with the Leroy, which is lethal. So the question is he going to notice? Now all he has to do here with the swipe is swipe the Flame Tongue. He just has to swipe a Flame Tongue. Or swipe the gadget down and kill a Flame Tongue. Just kill a Flame Tongue. He could have killed both Flame Tongues and he's going to lose because of it. This is not respecting the Flame Tongues. Never do this against this deck. You will die horribly. Because we're going to see from 23 life, he's going to die. Never, never do that against this kind of Shaman. You will die out of nowhere. You have to kill those Flame Tongues when they're next to each other. You can't allow someone to do that. This is where it comes down to not being experienced playing against this kind of deck. And a lot of people do die to this. The fact that all he had to do there was swipe the gadget. He got greedy on damage. If he had done the damage earlier in the game, he would have won right there. But because he didn't, all he had to do was swipe the Gadgetzan and attack a Flame Tongue with the Harvest Golem. And he would have lived there, and he would have been incredibly far ahead. But he went for some random sort of odd damage play that caused him to lose the game. And he went for damage earlier, then he stopped going for damage, then he went for damage in the end. It's conflicting playstyles that you can't afford to do because they make each other weaker. If you want to go for, if you want to take anything from this weekly, play a deck that you are used to and use a playstyle with that deck that is consistent and that you are familiar with and that you can actually use to an effect. Do not switch playstyles halfway through a game because you will lose. You can't switch playstyles. He had 2 ways of winning there. Controlling, where he went for the 4/6 with taunt at the beginning, and then he also went for that swipe on that Gadgetzan. And the other way of, he was so far ahead, the other way of winning was being aggressive and taking damage out of Reels' life total and just killing him. And that was the other way of doing it, and he decided to go for both. So he missed a bunch of damage and actually lost the game. And it's the kind of thing which Christopher is a very aggressive player normally, but he's been switching over to control decks recently, and it has been showing actually in his playstyle, where he goes for aggressive plays for no reason and then goes to these weird defensive plays. Do you think you're more of an aggressive player or defensive? I think that I'm an aggressive player. I tend to go for weird aggressive plays, and a lot of my game wins come from that in any card game I play, in Hearthstone, Magic, Soulforge, Yu-Gi-Oh, all of them. I've always been a very aggressive player. I can't stand playing control most of the time. Makes me feel weird. Like, even when I do play a deck like Druid, I play as the aggressive player, not the defensive player. But realistically, because I'm so used to that, I can make it work sometimes, but you can't give a playstyle like that to someone who's defensive. It just doesn't work. They start making mistakes for no reason, and that's what happened in that last game. So anyway, we do actually have time to go into the last game. Now, the last game, the reason I wanted to show this one is because this is running a deck that Christopher is known for. It originally came from Team Liquid, which is why it's called Monk. But this is a deck he's known for. He won a tournament with this. He's experienced with this deck. He plays it a lot. Something which he's very, 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 very good with. And also, at this point, Reels had played a couple games and he'd actually figured out that he had missed lethal before, and he's been checking every single time. That's why he's been playing a bit slower. So anyway, the deck that he's playing, I have showcased it before, but it is a Legendaries deck. I did an entire video on it. And this variation of the Legendaries deck is playing a Gorehowl, so it's a bit more sort of OTK-ish with the Alexstrasza as well, getting a bunch of damage in. And it's not playing a Nixia's tech or Ysera, it is playing the Alexstrasza and a Deathwing. And it's still playing the Tinkmaster, Blood Mage. It's a little win condition light for these kinds of decks. It's playing Grom, Alexstrasza, Ragnaros, Deathwing, and Gorehowl as its sort of last win condition. But most people do play the 5 win legendaries. But this one's playing 4 win legendaries, a Gorehowl to synergize with Alexstrasza, and then 2 mid game ones in Sylvanas and Karin. So that's what this particular version is playing. And how long do I have to wait for this to go in? We'll skip ahead a bit. So, we'll go into the last game here, once YouTube decides to skip. Come on, thank you. Now, actual opening hands, I would say Christopher has a much better opening hand, but they're both very good. Actually, it's debatable. Now that Reels has drawn that Rockbiter, I think he has a slightly better one. This is weird. What we're probably going to see from Reels here is a turn 2 Unbound Elemental with coin. I think that's what we're seeing. Yeah, turn 2 Unbound. Now, Christopher has a couple of options here. He can go for Fiery War Axe and attack it once, and then set it up for a Whirlwind later. He can slam it, and then Blood Mage Whirlwind it some other time, which I think might be a slightly better play. Or he can just armor up. I think he's going to go for the armor up. Now, the main reason he goes to the armor up here is because he's trying to get Reels to invest in this harvest, in this Unbound Elemental, get it larger, and then sort of exploit it and just deal a bunch of damage to it straight away. And so now we're probably going to see a slam into axe, I should imagine, or slam cleave. I think slam axe. Slam axe is probably what we're going to see. He's probably going to save the Blood Mage for a 3 damage cleave, but he wants to kill that that 2/4. He has shown that he doesn't have the Feral Spirits because he would have played it, so he's just going to straight out kill it. Now, going for the armor up gives him a bit of extra scouting information, where it lets him just see what Reels has in his hand and whether he was going to play it. So if he had some weird overload card like Ferals, he was probably going to play it if he had an Unbound on the board. I think we're going to see Flame Tongue here. Now, what's probably the best play here would be attacking the 2/2 with the Fiery War Axe, and then playing Blood Mage and cleaving. I think that's what we're going to see. Yeah, he's going to cleave. No point in using Whirlwind. And we're going to continue. Now, Reels has a bit of a weird hand. He doesn't really have any creatures, he just has controlling elements. So he's just going to control it as much as possible. He's going to go ahead and Earthshock that because he has a Hex. He doesn't have to have an Earthshock for a Sylvanas or a Karin, for example. He does have the Hex. And we're actually going to see the Karin come out, and he's going to get Hexed. So this is probably going to get Hexed, and then he's going to summon a Totem. Get his board set up a bit. Oh, he drew the Feral Spirits. It's a bit weird. The hand, like, update thing happens after it does on the board. Or before, depending on who you're looking at. It happens at the right time for the bottom player. If you notice, as soon as Christopher drags, it goes onto the board. But for the top player, it's a bit out of sync. So it's a bit confusing. But anyway. Okay, so I do like that one because he can use the axe to kill the Feral Spirits fully, and he gets sort of a half a card for half a card on the 2/2. This is going to be interesting. We can see a slam on that Azure Drake into Cruel Taskmaster Whirlwind. Oh, no, he drew the answer. He's going to probably just Azure Drake Whirlwind this. No point in investing more cards than you need to. I think Azure Drake Whirlwind would be the correct play here. It lets him keep his axe, and also lets him keep some of his enrage options for his Grom. He has all of his enrage options in his hand at the moment. He's already played a Cruel Taskmaster. I don't recall if he plays double Inner Rage, but he has both Whirlwinds. He's already played a Cruel Taskmaster, and he has one of the Inner Rages in his hand, so he may want to keep one of those for the Grom later in the game. He's thinking of not doing this because it keeps his 4-2. Gives him 4-2, which is kind of vulnerable to Lightning Bolt and Axe. Yeah, we're just going to see the Whirlwind here. He was thinking of Inner Raging so that he didn't have to deal with Axe, but he still does. Now, Reels has 8 mana available. He's got a couple of options. He could go Gadgetzan Feral or Gadgetzan. I think Gadgetzan Feral is interesting. I think Gadgetzan Bolt is another way of doing it. Stormforge Axe is the safer play though, because it just lets him deal with the 4-2 and it lets him keep him on the board. And from here I think we'll just see Totem and then maybe Feral Spirits and pass. Yeah, we're going to see Feral Spirits. He's being less greedy with his draw power on his Gadgetzan and more focusing on setting up a good board position. Especially considering Kistifer is now into Legendary mode where he's into 9 mana. So we're probably going to see just straight out Rag here. Yeah, we're going to see the Rag. I should imagine we're going to see the Rag and then attack a 2-3 with the Axe. Reels does have ways of dealing with a Rag, especially with Gadgetzan giving him draw power. And I think it might be getting a little bit dark in here. Give me a sec, I'll just turn on the light. Okay, should have done that before the show. Okay, so it did hit the 2-3. In the end, though, it doesn't really matter because he does have the Lava Burst Bolt, and he also drew the Hex. I should imagine this is going to get hexed because he wants to keep his burst for later. Yeah, Hex Totem. Okay, that makes sense. He's gonna Hex Totem and then kill it with a 1-1. Drawing that Hex made his life a bit easier because he only had 6 mana open from the Overload. I think Acolyte of Pain. Alright, he's gonna make it into a 3-2 draw card. Okay, I can see that. And then he's probably gonna armor up and then just pass. I think the reason he did that is so that it doesn't get sort of earth shocked and then just dies. He wants to get 1 card draw out of it. But then again, earth shock is a bit of a sketchy thing to use on that, so it's give or take either way. Now he's going to play the Gadgetzan and probably Lightning Bolt one of these and attack the other one with the Axe. Or Flame Tongue Totem so that he doesn't have to use an Axe charge. Probably Flame Tongue Totem. But then I think, yeah, he's going to go for the Axe. Slight misplay. He should have used the Lightning Bolt on the 3-2 so he took 1 less damage. Again, they're tiny misplays, but it's things to get used to. Playing Flame Tongue here, I'm not so sure about, and the main reason for that is Brawl. You want to increase the chance of you actually keeping your Gadgetzan as much as possible. I mean, he doesn't have the Brawl, so it's not a problem, but it's a possibility is the point. We might just see double Shield Slams here. One on the Flame Tongue, because he lost a Flame Tongue last time, so he's definitely going to kill it. Double Shield Slams and then an Armor Up pass. Okay, so what did Reels end up drawing? If you notice, there's a massive delay. Okay, he did end up drawing the Fire Elemental, which is pretty much exactly what he needed. Needed a solid creature that he can kill him with if he draws a Wind Fury. Drew the Big Game Hunter. That's a pretty big deal, to be honest. Drawing Big Game Hunter when your opponent is playing Warrior Legendaries is very critical. Now, what we're probably going to see here is... I'm actually not sure. We could see an Alexstrasza targeting Reels. We could see a Grom with Whirlwind and Inner Rage to clear most of the board, but that would be kind of sketchy. This is interesting. I think Alexstrasza is probably the best play here. What Christopher is thinking about is, what am I dead to? At this point, he is flat dead to a Leroy Jenkins double Rockbiter. He can't stop that. There's no way. So, I think he's going to play around the single Rockbiter. I think I would go for Grom, Whirlwind, Inner Rage. The one possibly. She doesn't have to Inner Rage. Yes, he does, because he can't get through the 2-2. He can't get through the 0-2 with Taunt. Yeah, I think Grom, Whirlwind, Inner Rage, the 0-1 Stoneclaw Totem, and then kill the Fire Elemental might be the best play. As stupid as it sounds, I think it's the best play. Because he's so close to dying straight away. It sounds dumb being on 23 effective life, but he is really close to dying. If Reels top decks a Leroy, then he's almost dead, I think. Well, that would be 17 damage. 18, 19, yeah, he's almost dead. And if he... No, he is dead. He has Lava Burst as well. If he top decked Leroy, then he would have just been dead. And if he top decked Wind Fury, he would have just been dead. So he is going to go for the safer play, even though it does mean he has to squander he has to squander a lot of his resources, which he really didn't want to. He's going to go for the safe play, which is killing out that Fire Elemental. He's thinking about the cards that Reels could have, and he's probably just going to go ahead and kill that Fire Elemental. As annoying as it is. Yeah, he's just going to go for the safe. Question is, what did Reels top deck? Rockbiter. Okay, yeah. If he hadn't done that, he would have been down to what? He had 8, 9, 14, 20 damage on the board. He would have been almost dead. So it's a good thing he actually decided to do that. Alexstrasza is going to target Reels and he's just going to pass. No point in using an execute on a Nat Pagel. This is going to get Big Game Huntered for sure. Ragnaros has already been played. Grom has already been played. Good just to flat out kill this and just go for some burst damage. Reels has lethal on board again, and that Nat Pagel has been drawing 3 cards, I think, now, and Leroy's in his hand. I don't think there's a way out of this. He's going to Tinkmaster the 6-5 probably and just hope for the best. But to be honest, it doesn't matter at this point. He is just flat out dead. He has lethal in hand, basically. To give you an idea, the amount of burst damage in this deck, currently, Reels actually has, what, 17 damage in hand, 18 with the spell power. That's just in his hand. Like, forget the board. So, at this point, I think we do see the mana kill with Nat Pagel. I would have mana killed with a Squirrel, personally, but we do see the mana kill with a Nat Pagel. Even the Wind Fury, it's so excessive. We're actually going to probably see the double Rockbiter, Wind Fury on the Nat Pagel. The mana kill with Nat Pagel. But yeah, I would have mana killed with a Squirrel. I think that it's more demoralizing to be mana killed by a 1-1 Squirrel that you converted a Fire Elemental into. But Reels disagrees. As we just see, it was Christopher's actual screen there. So it was a bit of an interesting series overall, to be honest. There was another game that was played in that series, which was with a priest, although I do personally think that was the worst game of the series. It didn't really showcase anything interesting. It just sort of showcased a kind of meh priest deck. Priest, I think, is an okay class at the moment. It's a bit sketchy. Some people can pull it off. I know that Duck Wingface, who streams a decent amount, has got to Legend with Priest before, and Forsen also has, out of the Priests I know, and they're pretty good decks. But it's just a bit of a sketchy class. But anyway, so from what we saw from there, the deck that Chakki put together, which is one of the main sort of subjects of this, it has a lot of burst damage, has a lot of reach. All of the games that were won, basically, we saw most of the work done by burst damage from either Leroy or Wind Fury or Rockbiters or sort of just lightning bolts, any burst damage, lava burst, anything. So much burst in that deck. There's 30 plus burst in that deck if you include everything. And the fact that you can do that out of nowhere, he managed to kill his opponent basically from 20 life in all 3 games, or he would have been able to. He missed it in the first game. And that is where the strength of the deck comes from, and that's why the deck has been so powerful and why it's won so many tournaments. It's because people don't really know how to play it around that much damage. It's a solid deck. It does not need the combo to win, but the combo can sometimes just give it the auto win in matchups that it normally would have issues with, like Druid. So the actual OTK element of the deck just helps every time you get ahead. We saw in the second game, he was behind for a lot of the game, and Christopher made a couple of rather major misplays, and just that small window was enough for him to lose, because Reels got board control for 1 turn and won on that turn from the OTK combo. It is that powerful. Just the ability to win the game off 1 or 2 turns of board control is incredible. So the other thing we saw in this particular weekly was the consequence of playing decks you're not familiar with. We did see Reels miss a lethal kill at one point, and he never missed a lethal kill again. If you notice, he played slower in the second and third games, never missed another lethal, and actually made do what the deck could do. But in the first game, he was playing too quickly and he missed it. And we sort of saw something similar on Christopher's side when it comes to it, because these kinds of King of the Hills require 4 decks. So we saw a priest deck he didn't really know how to play at one point, if you go and look for that. We also saw a druid deck which he had conflicted playstyles on, and a mage deck which, while he knew how to play because he'd been playing it a decent amount, recently at least, he still made a couple of misplays that he just wasn't used to having to deal with that kind of matchup. He wasn't used to playing as Shamans. But when he played his warrior deck, he played almost flawlessly. It was just that's why I decided to show the warrior game instead of the priest game, because it does show that the difference created by familiarity with the deck is huge. He went from, with the druid fumbling around a bit and losing an advantage he had and several different ways of killing his opponent, to playing a deck almost flawlessly, and he ended up losing because he ran out of answers and not because he actually performed badly. It's just a bit of a weird matchup overall, and he had a bit of a bad hand overall for what he was dealing with. Reels had the answers for everything he played, he didn't have the answers for everything Reels played, and he lost the game. But the actual difference in his playstyle and how well he performed as a player was massive between those 2 games, and that's the reason I decided to show that one. But anyway, this has been Jotto. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, put it in the comment section below. This should be going up every Sunday, these weeklies. Should be. Sometimes they go up on Saturdays, sometimes they go up on Mondays, depends what Twitch decides to do. But anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the tournament recap on Tuesday. So, this is Jotto, signing off.